Okay, this is a new format for me, but what I'm going to be doing is posting the longer form reviews of everything I review on here on YouTube into these big, longer videos. So feel free to just skip through to the albums that you want to see, or hopefully take in a few that you don't know. We're going to go through new stuff, old stuff, and then any other stuff I've been checking out as well. As part of the 10th anniversary release of Daft Punk's landmark Random Access Memories, we've been treated to 9 extra tracks spanning some new songs, demos, and studio outtakes. And normally, I'd say this kind of collection is just for the completists, just for the fans, maybe a bit throwaway, but this feels a bit different. Kicking things off, we have Horizon Overture and Horizon, the latter of which had previously been released on a Japanese bonus CD, which sounds like a massive blast from the past just saying that out loud. Both are lovely pieces. They're not overly essential. Again, if you love Daft Punk, you would say otherwise, but we get a pretty cool studio session after that of Give Life Back to Music, which is kind of an extended instrumental mix where it seems like all of the guest musicians and accompaniment are given the space to just solo over the song. And that's a process I imagine used to kind of retrospectively figure out how to construct the piece, the finished piece. And it's an interesting listen, with a particular standout being the flamenco guitar on it. One of two truly new songs here is Infinity Repeating, like a really chill collaboration with Julian Casablancas and his other band, The Voids. This is a really gentle song that's propelled by some really creative and subtle drumming. It has all of the rich live instrumentation felt on Random Access Memories, but I probably can't really see it sitting on that record. It's hard to know where they were in the production when this song came up. It feels like it would have needed quite a lot of work to make it fit aesthetically with the finished album, and so perhaps that's why it was left out. It certainly isn't due to not being a good song though. Prime is kind of the inverse of Infinity Repeating in that it aesthetically fits with the cyber disco sound. It's just missing either the direction or the soul present on the Voids track. But it's definitely an interesting listen. The most surprising thing for me on this little bonus set, though, is how much I enjoyed things like the vocoder test for Lose Yourself to Dance. It just spotlights the incredible bass playing of Nathan East so well, and showcases the deep groove that sits at the core of a track that's often overlooked on that album as the other Nile Rodgers and Pharrell collaboration. The other is the writing of Fragments of Time, which is a track that is exactly as it says. It's a live documentation of Thomas Bangalter and Todd Edwards very excitedly working out the lyrics and vocal melody for Fragments of Time. Weirdly, with this level of access, you don't feel like any of the mystique of the band or album itself is eroded. I think the track kind of sums up what makes this little collection so cool, from the unfinished tracks to the rough cuts to this. It just showcases how much joy and excitement went into making Random Access Memories. I think it's actually really inspiring and makes you want to create something yourself. So I would give this, even though it's a deluxe edition, it's a bonus disc, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. Fire-Toolz is the stage name of Angel Markloyd, a multi-instrumentalist and record producer creating sounds at the bleeding edge of the 21st century. There are a number of albums in Fire-Toolz' discography, but I Am Upset is the first one I've listened to. There really is no comparison you can make to any other artist, so I would just say, just as like a point of reference to describe the music on this album, that it sounds like PlayStation 1 era menu music blended with death metal blast beats and vocals, with occasional forays into free jazz. The more I learn about Mark Lloyd, the more impressive I find her, and there are many moments of virtuosity on display on this album across multiple instruments. But as much as I admire the creativity, to say I found this record challenging at points would be a minor understatement. There are tracks when the intense fusions come together for me, like the free jazz freak out of Mantra, the ambient / noise collision of Soaked, and the soothing guitars of Paraclete, but otherwise I feel like the music here is very much an acquired taste that I just haven't personally yet acquired. So for me, this is a 4 out of 10. 2020, Jessie Ware released Watch Your Pleasure, a disco-infused masterpiece that, while extremely danceable, had a low-key, subdued minor chord haze across its 12 tracks, somewhat fitting for the time period, as the record no doubt soundtracked a million small apartment gatherings through the lockdowns that followed that year. Flash forward to the present, and Ware has put forward another incredible disco record, and this time the disco is exactly that, all caps, screaming exclamation mark, DISCO, disco. That Feels Good is an album of wall to wall feel good tracks designed to help you drop your hang ups before heading to the dance floor. Disco is the foundational sound here, yes, but Jesse does also use this to push into a few different directions over the course of the track list. Free Yourself introduces some house elements early on, and this appears later in a very 2000s Basement Jaxxy kind of way on Freak Me Now. Lightning gives me echoes of Sade while including some cool vocal cut-ups that keep the production fresh, and Begin Again drops some keys with a Latin flair towards the end. The track Beautiful People is one of my favourites here. The bass line is propulsive and really reminiscent of legendary player Bernard Edwards of Chic. We can't close out the review though without, of course, praising the incredible Jessie Ware herself. Ware is an incredible vocalist. We get flashes of this on the song Hello Love, for instance, yet for the most part, Ware deploys her full range very sparingly. And it's that discipline that really lets every song take flight by allowing groove and tempo to take priority rather than just flexing vocal chops. Ware instead focuses on performance and character, and we really get to hear her vocally have a lot of fun on That Feels Good. To me, this is another utterly fantastic, uplifting, and fun record. It's a banger, and this is a 9 out of 10. I was drawn to listen to Once Upon a Time in Montreal because I really like the cover art. I thought it looked so cool, even though I'd never heard of Lightburn or The Deers, the band in which he made his name. What I uncovered was a very straight ahead singer songwriter album with a very chilled, almost lounge music feel. There is a lot of reference to religion across the record, which, when reading the lyrics, I can't get a read on Lightburn's stance. This is a personal issue for me, but whenever I detect anything remotely religious and preachy, it just turns me right off. I like gospel music because it sounds amazing and it is what it is. Its intentions are laid bare straight from the outset. When I feel like someone is trying to smuggle some religion to me in song, it just rubs me the wrong way. It's not my only complaint here, though. For the most part, Lightburn sticks to these vocal melodies that sound like standards or even nursery rhymes, so you easily find yourself humming along. But musically, the only things I really respond to here are the ever so slightly grittier cuts like "Oh, But My Heart Has Never Been Dark," which is a very classic smoky R&B or soul vibe to it. But even that is somewhat undercut by the lyrics, so this one's just sadly not for me. It's a 3 out of 10. Ambient drum and bass and electronic artist that has released music in many incarnations over the years. Jōhatsu is a soundtrack album written and performed by Barrott for an as of right now unreleased Japanese documentary on the art of evaporation. While it's a shame the documentary seems unlikely to ever be released at this point, I'm really glad that we have had the chance to hear this soundtrack because it's a fantastic ambient release and one of my favourite albums of the year, full stop. The record spans a number of moods, starting with the uptempo vocal sampling Kyoto, which is then followed by the contemplative solo piano of Shinrin Yoko. My favourite moments are the pieces that lean more into jazz, like Yonige with its creative drums, but most specifically Icarus, which just has a perfect combination of trumpet, piano, synths, and drums. If you're into ambient music or soundtrack work, absolutely check this out. This is a 9 out of 10. Okay, so I suppose I should be honest. I feel like since the release of her self-titled 2013 album, Beyoncé has adopted a bit of a holier than thou persona. While I know this has mainly been driven by the fan base assigning her the Queen Bee moniker, it feels like the artist in question really kind of leans into it and it just kind of turns me off. When I heard that Beyonce was adopting a house music sound on this latest record, the cynic in me instantly imagined a panel of 25 market researchers informing B that pursuing a style that encompasses disco, house club, and ballroom culture is the move. It baffles me the amount of mental gymnastics I went through to avoid this record, forgetting the simple fact that my cynicism about her, outside persona aside, I genuinely, generally, on the whole, love Beyonce's music. And Renaissance is no different. I love it, and this album is worthy of all the hype and the accolades it got last year when it came out. Beyonce actually cites a close relationship with her cousin, who sadly lost his life during the AIDS epidemic, as the impetus for adopting a queer underground club culture aesthetic on this record. But whether personally or commercially motivated or somewhere in between, it is clear that a lot of care has been taken with the production of Renaissance. The record encompasses a wide range of styles of post-70s black underground club culture, from ballroom to Miami bass to Chicago house, R&B, and even Afrobeat. And while a lot of songs are original, there are often samples thrown in that provide a kind of tip of the hat to the artists that typified that particular sound. As with all Beyonce records, the list of songwriters is endless, even more so on this album due to heavy sample usage. But while a lot of criticism can get leveled at a modern pop artist for this way of working, that seems like such a redundant criticism to me, because there's no way you can listen to Renaissance without recognizing a singular vision running through the record. There's a real skill in bringing together many disparate voices and forging them into something singular. Male artists like Kanye are often praised for this, in fact. And here Beyonce executes this flawlessly, all the while delivering her typically stunning vocals throughout. The songs are often blended like one big club mix, where one song smoothly transitions from one to the other. Some of these transitions are actually so seamless, it took me a while to realize where one song ended and one song began. One of my few criticisms, though, of the record is that initially they kind of established thing of the tracks being grouped in threes, these kind of like suites evoking a certain genre, but ultimately they kind of abandoned that halfway through. And it would have been cool to see that kind of approach be consistent throughout. That being said, I love pretty much every track here. Um, but there are some specific observations that stood out to me. The first real eye opening moment for me was on Alien Superstar, which has such an emotive chorus that emerges seemingly out of nowhere against this backdrop of a really stark beat, but it works so well. Plastic Off the Sofa is one of the few wholly original compositions, and offers a part R&B, part neo-funk jam that I was really pleased to see Patrick Page's second of the internet listed as a songwriter on. This mainly just so that he can get the bag, but also I just love hearing his bass playing, and it's great here. America Has a Problem. The liner notes cite the only sample as Cocaine by Kilo Ali, but to me, the underlying progression is really reminiscent of the song Sin, an early Nine Inch Nails track, when they were in their kind of goth, electro, industrial stage, club stage. And it actually makes perfect sense, especially with those classic 90s synth stabs in there. I love the beat switch in Pure slash Honey that turns the track into a proper classic Prince-esque groove. All in all, the album completely blew me away. I avoided it for so long. I'm also kind of glad I did, because it's cool to fully feel the impact of it outside of the hype cycle. I would give this a 9 out of 10. Try this if you liked, or if you like this, you should try Jessie Ware, What's Your Pleasure, and maybe this isn't a direct comparison, but if you like some of the Afrobeat examples on this, maybe check out the Bibio Sound Machine as well. Nights is the 10th studio album by Taylor Swift, representing a shift in tone from her recent stripped back acoustic albums Folklore and Evermore. Tonally, I feel like the album represents a combination of the contemporary pop sound of 1989, but not quite as lush or as bright as Lover, with some of the attitude of Reputation, but this time without pushing too far into parody. This record is just as packed with hooks and hits as you would expect, but it does feel a little flatter in comparison to some of the other albums I've mentioned. Lavender Haze and Anti-Hero are without doubt definite keepers, but we also get a few fairly unremarkable songs, like Question, with oddly specific lyrics and scenarios that could potentially keep a listener at arm's length. Certainly, that was the case for me, anyway. I do really like the staccato strings on Snow on the Beach. It also has an infectious chorus after a few listens, but it does feel like a little bit of a waste of a Lana Del Rey feature, especially as a few tracks later we have Vigilante Shit, which feels reminiscent of early LDR and a more obvious fit for her to guest on. Vocal cut-ups and pitch shifting are common production choices on the album, and these cast a modern, subdued and low-key mist over the songs. There are big bright moments that break through this mist, like Bejeweled, and Karma, like a breath of fresh air, but also ultimately kind of draw more attention to how few of these moments there actually are on the album as a whole. And it made me realize how much I value them in Swift's music. It made me realize that that's kind of actually what I go to Taylor Swift to seek out, those big, huge, shimmery moments, and not low key, cool, detached songwriting. Midnight's absolutely proves this vibe is in her wheelhouse, but perhaps in pursuing this, the result is losing what makes Swift so Swiftian. I would give this record a 6 out of 10. It's quite funny to look at Born to Die over 10 years after its original release. I remember at the time Lana's breakthrough album not really being very well understood by either general audiences or the music press. With video games, it felt like by virtue of just being a solo female singer, the public assumed Del Rey was going for a whole Adele thing and failing, while Pitchfork, on the opposite side, misread the cool detachment, decrying Born to Die a disappointment because of how out of touch it feels with the simple business of human emotion. Personally, yeah, I can't claim any sort of superiority. I was indifferent at the time. I wouldn't join the fandom until the next album, Ultraviolence, in 2014. But I think the fact that as an artist, Lana is more revered now while continuing to puzzle, if not outright frustrate, both her audience and the industry with her persona is testament to a true artist and proof that sometimes neither the institution or the consumer can be the arbiter of important art. As for the album itself, I think it stands up and continues to age well. It's tempting to write off tunes like Diet Mountain Dew and Radio, given they are the most removed from her future work. But while they take a touch of influence from artists like Lily Allen or MIA, which could risk carbon dating a late 2000s, early 10s sound, I think the subtle nods are subtle enough to feel more like just a date code on the right hand corner of an otherwise fresh looking photo, more than being, so strictly time stamping that time. And they also inject the album with the right amount of energy, which at the time was needed to kind of help ease into the slow burning LDR trademark. But now, still, all these years later, continue to make the record accessible. Lyrically, you would have all of the templates that Lana would build her career on, but continue to mine with more sophistication and maturity in later years. It's not technically the first album, but this is definitely where Del Rey truly emerged as an important artist, and it's still a great record all of these years later. I would give Born to Die an 8 out of 10. Okay, so for other stuff this week, I will be posting a deep dive into the music used on the Netflix series Beef. You can check that out on my TikTok. That'll be coming at some point this week. I'm also going to be doing a Is It Overrated on Random Access Memories. So stay tuned for that. And then also a fifth part in my ongoing What to Listen to If series will be coming up soon as well. So check the links to my other pages. Thanks for watching and chat to you next time.